Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Key rostermania developments overnight with the two targets that were linked to OpTic last week and now looking at other opportunities. Envoy to Ultra potentially in a weird turn of events and Drazah to FaZe. What does this mean for all the other top teams? Where does it leave OpTic in terms of especially their flex position? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. Wow, a lot changed last night and things I'm sure will continue to change in the future. Firstly though, from the Las Vegas Legion confirming goodbye to Temp, Standy, Clay and TJ for an incredible season, they say. All phenomenal players. I don't even know who wrote this, to be honest, just because I don't even know what their social media situation looks like right now, but whatever. They say thank you to their players. This is what they typically do. They will release everyone and then in due course they will maybe sign some of these guys back. Donny Temp, of course, would be, like, he's been stuck on Legion for some time now. I hope that there are potentially greener pastures ahead of him and maybe there's a reunion with Kenny on Thieves or something. If they're struggling for, you know, top AR talent, they could bring in Temp or something. That might be an option. Also, I know some people are asking the question, will Vegas go for another rebrand? Just because, like, they're going to stay, I think, as the Vegas Legion. But last season, they tried, I think, to change their logo from, you know, the Paris one, but they missed the deadline or something, so they couldn't do it. So if they've got that logo ready to go and they prefer it, then I guess they will try again and probably be successful this time. But I'm not so sure I want them to, actually. I kind of feel like this logo's grown on me a little bit, I guess, over the last season or so. So anyway, that's the Vegas Legion update. There's also this from London confirming their coach Dominate has been, well, effectively let go. So, yeah, he's been with the organisation a long time now. Yes, they haven't had great results, but in fairness, you know, since 2019, the Modern Warfare days, and also certainly the start of the Vanguard season, they did pretty well. This past season was a disaster, though, and as with, you know, Brian Satan stuff, teams that underperform are going to make changes here. Whether this is that they're letting him go because of those reasons, or whether they're letting him go just because it's completely going to be a squad wipe over there and they're starting from the ground up, because that's what it kind of seems to be. They've let all their players go, their coach is gone, they might be moving to another city. It's a complete mess at London. It has been for a long time. Wishing Dominate the best, but those are the updates there. And also, Phoenix, apparently, from Seattle Surge, is expected to leave. There hasn't really been anything from Phoenix's side on this yet, but I believe Ben also said a couple of days ago that he'd heard something similar, that we're not really sure what Phoenix's future is, but it's probably not on Surge. So again, they're kind of squad wiping and running it from the ground up. And honestly, it's going to take all the situations with the top teams to resolve themselves before we start to see how this trickles down to the rest of the teams. OpTic are coming out with a process episode later on today discussing everything at, you know, Major 5 in the World Championship itself. I believe, you know, this is definitely including Toronto as well. Also some Halo stuff I think that was going on at the time. There was also this, if I go to 57, I know people were mentioning this just because you know how it is. So 57 seconds here are the boys and they're watching on the screen at the Seattle Surge guys. You know, we've got Pred, we've got Sim on the screen, and look, maybe this clip didn't have to be put in the episode, but it was, and we're going to discuss these two players here in the coming minutes, because OpTic now find themselves in a rather interesting position. Maybe they've started this chain of events by making a decision, or maybe the players in question are simply exploring opportunities, given the fact that nobody can sign anything or even verbally agree anything yet until they're officially free agent on this coming Monday. You can't sign any deals. So that's why anything can change up until the very last minute. So last night, people were like, all right, here we go. Things are going to get spicy. And then Jacob L comes out with this tweet, which really kicks things off, which is Toronto in talks with the Envoy. Now, the Toronto situation is so flexible and nobody really seems to know what's going on over there. The rumour had it the other day, massive financial issues. They're selling Insight, they're selling CleanX, and seemingly those players potentially are still up for sale, and maybe even Scrappy as well. We'll get into that. And also, if you're Thieves, given the rebuilds they've got to do, if you can't get CleanX or potentially Insight or something, they might find themselves in a really tough spot. But it seemed like Ultra was struggling, but I think there's clearly a bit of a tug of war going on there in terms of who's making the calls, because the rumour was initially that these changes to the team were being instigated by higher management, as in, you know, organisation level management, rather than team management, as in the coaching staff, and a quite deep coaching staff they have over there. So it's a little bit unclear whether it's the organisation itself from a high-end level, given they just made the grand finals of champs, making all these moves, or whether the team itself is being overruled in some sense. It does feel like there's a bit of a power struggle going on for who's actually making the calls over there, because now they almost seem to have a bit of money. They want to give Envoy an offer. Apparently yesterday they held a couple of meetings with Envoy, and he's been, of course, listening to the offers. Now, not to say that he won't still go to an OpTic necessarily, but it does make it less likely. And Toronto are preparing an offer, apparently, to give to Envoy come Monday as soon as it opens. But also, would Envoy even want to join if their team is a complete mess and they've sold all their players and maybe Scrappy's gone as well? Because this is the other part of the discussion, that if Envoy is going to Ultra, and obviously this is only talks and it's far from guaranteed to occur, and if Drazah is going to FaZe, we'll discuss that in a second, that leaves Scrappy in a weird spot, because OpTic will probably want Scrappy in that situation, but then Envoy probably wouldn't want to go to Ultra if Scrappy was going to get sold, and maybe they sell Scrappy and have the money to build a great team around Envoy. I don't know, but it's a really interesting kind of development here, and as JoeDeceives says, might seem simple, but it's important to note that, you know, a team sending an offer doesn't mean the player will accept, right? And it's the same story with Drazah in a second, where the rumor has it that FaZe have him as one of their top priorities, if not their top priority, but doesn't necessarily mean it's the same feeling for Drazah the other way. So we'll get into that, and these whole financial struggles. I'll show a clip here from Ben in a second where he basically says that there's so much misinformation coming around about that camp. People are leaking things from internally in Toronto to suit their own agendas. But from what I've heard, it's a complete mess, complete shambles over there. I don't know what's going on. I think it's so flexible, that situation, that could change over the coming days. And you'd think Envoy would only want to join if there is, you know, a seriously good team being formed over there, because otherwise you might think, you know what, maybe I'll just go back to Thieves or something, right? Because if their team is going to be better than what Toronto are forming, that is definitely a possibility. But Envoy, of course, was rumored a few days ago to be talking to OpTic. It seemed like OpTic, certainly at the time, their planned team was going to be Shotzzy, Dashy, Drazah, Envoy. But that's a long time ago, and a lot of things have changed over the last several days, and Envoy and others have been taking calls with different teams to see how things are going. And then we get this announcement here from CDL Scum Intel, who says that Drazah is the top of FaZe's wishlist. This makes way more sense, to be honest, than Insights being the top of their wishlist. I just couldn't understand why they'd want to change out another main AR and keep going around this carousel. If they want to make a positive change, I think it's got to be some sort of role change, and really Cellium to the main, bring in a flex, is the most sensible way to do it. And of all the flexes on the market, Drazah is the most attractive option, I would say. OpTic were looking at him over Ghosty, which I certainly think is understandable. Now look, Drazah and aBeZy and Simp, they've had their beef. Can they put it to bed for the sake of, you know, teaming up? I think they certainly can. Would Drazah have FaZe as his number one option? It's tough to think that he wouldn't, just because even Octane said a few days ago on stream that if FaZe had given him an offer, he would have very heavily considered not even retiring. So if FaZe do want Drazah, as it seems like they might, and also you've got to think, and I'll share this in Ben as well, Ben and Zuma and all this, like Ben has been saying for a couple of weeks now, oh, don't count out the FaZe Drazah thing, and I think he was saying it, like he was gassing up Slasher heavily last time. Like Ben obviously has a little bit of intel from the FaZe camp, and if you watch Ben's stream closely, you can probably gather some information on what he might be getting towards. So I definitely think that there's a lot of evidence that this could potentially happen.
I don't know where this insight to FaZe thing started. That doesn't make any sense. So I think, like, this is my other thing, chat. You're seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter coming out of the Toronto camp that I don't know where it's coming from. And I would be very skeptical on everything you read from there, because there's a lot of people with agendas there leaking shit, trying to jockey on whatever situation's going on there. I can assure you, talking to people in Toronto, that it's a mess. That's a 100% certainty. The Toronto situation is very unstable right now, and a lot of things up in the air regarding their team. And I repeat it again. OpTic and FaZe need to make decisions, but I think what's going on, and neither team will confirm it to me. I asked, and I think because of sensitivity of this, and none of them want to say it, Toronto is a very, like, unstable situation right now. But Scrap, if you were to make a list of, like, trade value players that are reasonable trade value, like could actually be available, I think Scrap is theoretically potentially available. I don't know what his price is. I think it's probably crazy, but I think it's a possibility. And I think both teams are just waiting to see if Toronto is going to stay together or blow their team up.
Drazah is at the top of Atlanta FaZe's wish list for a new forward. Ben, did you talk about this?
What, the Drazah thing from Ronnie?
Yeah, from Scrim Intel, Ronnie.
I mean, what do you think about it?
I mean, what do you think about it, VJ? Hey, VJ, what do
you
you think?
You go first.
Hey, VJ, you go first, VJ.
You go first.
VJ, you go first, VJ.
I want to hear your opinion.
I mean, listen, bro. You want my opinion? I mean, listen, bro. I mean, like, you know, I can see it happening. You know, I can see it. I can see it, chat.
So if FaZe Drazah becomes a thing, and that would be, you know, proper super team territory, right? When you've got Cell, aBeZy, Simp, Drazah. I mean, it's pretty damn nice. And I think it makes a lot of sense for them. And also in the same way, like, Drazah and OpTic never really, like, a lot of OpTic fans, I'm sure that OpTic fans would have accepted Drazah in some respects, but many OpTic fans, especially given how loved Ghosty was, would not have wanted Drazah on their team. So I think for a few reasons, this actually makes more sense going down this route. But it does leave OpTic in a pretty interesting position, where they will need a new flex player. Now, Shotzzy has said that he's not going to be the flex, he's going to be a sub, and if Envoy is going to Toronto, then surely this means they've got to get Pred. I can't realistically see another alternative here. If FaZe aren't getting Pred, Pred's other top option will be OpTic, I'm sure, and they've got to get that done in this scenario, right? So the way things are leaning at the moment, it feels like Pred to OpTic is going to become a thing after all, despite how doubtful it was. Now, who's their fourth going to be? Do they say, you know what, Envoy, come in anyway, and we'll make you a flex or something? Maybe that's an option. Or they actually look for another flex. Now, from those flex options, if no Drazah are available, there's not that many good options remaining, right? You're looking at Sib, and you're maybe looking at Scrappy, and maybe there's some other candidates, but Scrappy would be the ideal. Can you get him off Toronto? I don't know. Would Envoy want to go there if they sold Scrappy? Maybe you sell Scrappy to OpTic, and then they can keep Inside and CleanX. They run out of their money, you know, their money issues go away. They can bring Envoy on and actually build a competitive team. Maybe that's the solution. And I know that many people were suggesting even the middle of this season about this potential team of Dashy, Shotzzy, and then Sib and Pred coming along from Surge. And, you know, this team to me feels super questionable, right? Like, I don't really exactly understand where the leadership's coming from. I'm not sure how this AL combination is going to work. I think there's a lot of questions here. This team will obviously have an incredibly high ceiling, but I think could have a dangerously low floor looking at the team of four. In an ideal, like, if I was OpTic's GM, I'd prefer Scrappy here for Sib, if you could. Form that team of four, and then you're really hard cooking at that point, and that is a proper super team. This version, I'm personally not so convinced by, but if you can't get Scrappy and you can't get Drazah, then, like, what are the better options out there? Like, is Ghosty your best option? Maybe they say, Ghosty, you know what? Apologies for dropping you. Do you want to come back? Because I feel like I would have more confidence in that team with Ghosty than I would with Sib. I think maybe the Sib team has a higher ceiling, but I think that there's more risk associated with that. Depends what OpTic want to do. But yeah, I think it really does raise some interesting questions here as to what all these teams are going to play at. And even, you know, Jake Hale comes out with these ideas that OpTic could buy out Scrappy, get Pred in, and I think, you know, like, that would be the ideal for OpTic in some respects. And I believe that probably is what's holding things up, because yesterday I thought, you know what, maybe the teams know that they can't get Scrap. But now looking at it, it feels like, and Ben JoeDeceives said on stream last night that he reckons that that's what's holding things up, that even FaZe, they're not sure if they can get this guy. And the teams are waiting a little bit just to see how this Toronto drama will resolve itself before they can figure out what to do. But look, in a sense, right, this isn't the worst idea for Ultra. If they could sell Scrap, they'd get a lot of money for him, right? And even there was talk from OpTic that they were going to pay this mega buyout of, what was it, like 500, pushing 700k to get Pred off of Seattle at the time, which is pretty wild to think about given that they might well still acquire him for free several months later, but they were willing to put up some big money there earlier this year to get Pred into OpTic. Seattle said no to everything, but if they're willing to put up big money to get Pred at the time, they would also presumably be willing to put up big money to get Ultra to sell Scrappy, in which case they could then use that money to, you know, form their own good team. And then in this world, FaZe get Sib, which, you know, that could also work in some ways. I mean, Sib was their substitute a couple of years ago. There is a relationship there. As I say, I think Sib's a good slayer, but I'm not exactly sure if he brings what's missing from that FaZe team. And this also would leave Thieves in a really tricky spot where, like, you know, if Insight and CleanX aren't available for potentially Kenny to build a squad around over at Thieves, then, like, who knows what's going to happen, right? So this situation remains highly volatile. Things can change and will change, I'm sure, a lot over the coming days, but that is where we leave it for the moment because that's what we presently understand. So if you're able to tweet your thoughts in the comments below, hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.